All right. So let's talk about injuries. Let's talk about this game, this game that I love, this game that I love more than people can even understand how much I love this game. I've been watching NFL football legitimately. You'll hear people say this. I've been watching this legitimately since I was 7 years old. When I was a kid, man, I mean, I still have like 50,000 football cards, and I would get all my cards out. I had them inventoried all day Sunday. I just sit in front of the TV, have my cards out, inventorying my cards, watching the games. I would keep stats in a notebook. I mean, I fucking love this game. And I know Damar Hamlin doesn't have anything to do with what I'm getting ready to say. And I know, and we're talking about Chuck Hughes. For those that don't know Chuck Hughes, we're talking about Chuck Hughes. You'll know him by the end of the video. And Tua, his concussions, right? Concussions happen in football. It's part of football. But the first thing I want to say to start off this whole injury thing, even though it really doesn't apply to those three people that are the main subject of this, is 17 games is too many. I love watching this game, and I just told you to take some off the board. These guys are killing themselves. The injuries are up. I mean, they're talking about expanding the roster. It's too many fucking games, man. Their bodies can't put up with it. And you get these guys who've never played or they haven't played since fourth grade, and they're talking about they're a bunch of pussies, and that's what they get paid to do. These guys are sacrificing themselves. They're so big. They're so powerful. They're so fast. The human body can't take it over and over and over and over again. And the injuries are they're getting out of hand. And I'm afraid, we talked about this before. We know, I wouldn't be surprised if it's next year. They're going to drop another preseason game and they're going to go to 18. They're not going to sit at 17. They're testing this out. They're going to 18 games. Then what? We go to 20? I don't know where this stops. But if you have now, I mean, it's always been a thing where you had to worry about injuries to make a championship run. Now it's just ridiculous. I mean, fuck, hold your starters out the first 6 games so they don't get hurt. I don't know where it's going. But I'll get off my soapbox. I want to talk about Tua first. Is that all right?
Yep.
You got anything you want to say before I start?
So we kind of hit on this last week talking about Tua. It's just concussions. When you talk about concussions in football, I think 16 years old when concussions like really became a discussion in football, and the lawsuit with the NFL started to happen with the former players. And since then, like the research that has come out about concussions, like there's only so much that we've been able to do with modern science and the technology of our time. They can only figure out so much while we're alive. Like it's not like they can just go in and start cutting open your brain and then sew it back together. You know what I mean? So there are some answers that we can't have while people are alive, which is unfortunate. But there's enough out there that you just have to. You can't just slide it away. You know what I mean? If you watched our Dolphins video earlier this week, you heard me mention like these dudes work their whole lives to get here, right? It's a dream. You've played since you were 4 years old. You worked forever to get here. You put in all the hours, all the work to get to where you are and live out your dream. At what point, though, is making all that money and living out your dream and playing the game you love, at what point does that stop being worth it? And I think that's the question when we talk about Tua. That's the question that we have to think of. We as Colts fans, a little known guy. I don't know how many people outside of Indianapolis know this guy's name, Austin Collie. I know people in New England will probably remember this name. Austin Collie started to become a really good receiver that not a lot of people talk about. One of those real reliable slot guys, like a Wes Welker kind of guy. And his career was cut short because of concussions. And if you want to, go look at the videos of Austin Collie getting his concussions, specifically the one in Philadelphia. I'll never forget the hit that he took in Philadelphia. Was one of the scarier hits up to that point. Was one of the scarier hits that I'd ever seen. Like I just replaying it back in my head. Like I'll never forget the feeling of watching that happen as it happened. Like it's scary stuff. Devontae Adams a few years ago in the position that he was in, like getting these concussions with the velocity that it happens at. in today's NFL. These dudes are so fast, so strong. There's so much that goes in to these head injuries. So when we talk about, our love for the game, like the love that we wouldn't do this if we didn't absolutely love football. You know what I mean? The time commitment that we take out of our days to put this stuff together. Like we love the game of football, the time we take to watch football, to talk about football. But there's always that side of it that you can't escape. It's the part that when you go to play football, you're signing that contract saying, I know that this is possible. And you never know that the ugly side of football is there until you're confronted with it. And that's what we talk about, getting back into some of these guys. Tua is obviously the most recent one to come up. Is he ever going to play again? Is the question there. And I think that's something that he would seriously have to consider at this point.
Yeah, I want to go into Tua, but I want to touch on a couple of things you said. First of all, Austin Collie has now devoted his life to concussion rehab. He works for an organization, and that's what he does. The organization's Cognitive FX, and their concussion treatment center, and he's devoted his life to them. So because it's had such an impact on him. I remember when I was younger and I got a concussion. I didn't know that's what it was then. I know now that's what it was. My son Zach played college football, and you know that. And Zach suffered a couple of concussions that we're aware of. One of them was pretty significant in high school, and I just saw behavior out of him that I never expected. Your cousin, my nephew, suffered a nasty concussion that has changed his personality and when he played high school football. So this is a dear subject in this household. We talk about this a lot. So on to Tua. They're saying Tua got 2 concussions this year. I think it was 3. Right? It's hard to prove. It's very hard to prove for a lot of reasons. So they have to. That's why the discussion came about, because sometimes, when my son Zach in high school got his concussion, he went to the wrong huddle and they spun him around, shoved him back in the other huddle, and then he squatted down in a 3-point stance that looked like a 9-year-old that never played before. He was an Indiana All-Star, and the kid across from him just put him on his back. When you observe that kind of behavior, it's obvious, right? Unfortunately, it doesn't always present that way, which is why they can only definitively say Tua's had 3 concussions. But I put money down that they said he had 2 concussions this year, 3 head injuries. I put money down that he had 3 concussions. We talked about this a couple weeks ago. The more you have concussions, the more susceptible you are to having concussions. It's just the way it works. All right. So, and I have to throw in there too, which it really isn't. It'll come into play here in the conversation in a second. There used to be a rule: you had 3 concussions, you're out of football. Now, medical science is advanced. That's not really the rule anymore. They kind of take it situation by situation. But there's still an unwritten rule that 3 concussions in a season, you should be out. Of course, Tua's only had 2 concussions, so that doesn't apply. When I watched the Dolphins and the Packers game, it made me sick to my stomach that he was still playing. He wasn't right. You could tell right away. First of all, when I watched the first concussion, I think I may have texted you immediately. I was watching, and nobody made big. I was like, holy shit, that dude can't even stand up. His legs were wobbling. They tried to say it was a back injury and all that bullshit. And I think I texted you right when it happened, said, dude, he's concussed. They rocked him hard. I knew right away it was a concussion. When I saw him in the Packers game, it was so obvious. And now people are like, oh, well, he had a concussion. That's why he was playing the way he was. But here we are, 5-6 weeks out. I knew it right then. The guy went from just torching the place to suddenly throwing it around like Carson Wentz and throwing it to everybody but who he was supposed to. And it just didn't make sense. And I knew it was a concussion. And Tua has said that he doesn't remember. Did you know that he doesn't remember the rest of the Packers game?
That doesn't surprise me. I hadn't heard that, but yeah,
that's nasty, bro. That is nasty, nasty, nasty. When that part of your memory, that much of your memory is removed. So this is serious business, serious shit. And you got a guy that's played his whole life, right? He doesn't think it's going to happen again. They're all invincible. They're young and they got superpowers. I mean, and they think it's not going to happen again. Everybody thinks it's not going to happen again. There's so much money on the line, and I don't mean this like, you know, the corporate tyrant, the money monster, and all that shit. But you know that if Tua can give a persuasive enough argument, it doesn't even have to be that persuasive. If the doctor's like, well, I don't care, it's up to him, and he's like, yep, I want to play, boom, they'll sign off on that shit because it's money. It's money. I mean, it all comes down to money. And Tua's not a good judge of whether he should play or not, unfortunately, because, you know, when it comes down to it, very few players can do what Andrew Luck did and know when it's time to walk away before when they should. Usually it's afterwards, and it's like, shit, I should have walked away. That's why I admire Andrew Luck so much. I know people hate him for it. I don't like the way it happened. It actually wasn't his fault the way it happened. I mean, he was going to leave during the season, but the way it came down at the preseason game, that wasn't his fault. It was Ian Rappaport, right?
Yeah, either Ian Rappaport or Adam Schefter. Yeah.
Yeah, one of those two. So if it wasn't you, I apologize. So I don't know that Tua is a good judge of whether he should or whether he shouldn't. But he says he's coming back. So that tells me everything I need to know. He's planning on coming back. Without him, the Dolphins are screwed. I don't know what they're going to do, but they better start thinking about it. Maybe this guy Webb from New York is a good, because Teddy Two Gloves ain't it. They need a quarterback. Maybe Brady will come in, but you know, what if Tua starts? Is Brady going to sit? I doubt that's going to happen. It's a vicarious position, but all I know is right now, not right now, period, Tua's damaged goods because he's more susceptible. Every concussion, you're more susceptible. And the next one could and probably will be it. He's probably one concussion away from being done. And the sad part about it is he is probably already going to suffer brain damage in the long term.
See, I always think back to, you know what I mean, a quarterback, you know, from when you were growing up is Jim McMahon. And I think over the last, you know, decade or so, he's got enough help to be better than he was for a time. But I mean, you go back and look, one of the most notorious dirty plays, and probably the dirtiest play in NFL history, was him getting picked up by a Packers player and dropped straight, like thrown down onto his head well after releasing a ball on the old AstroTurf, which was basically concrete. And you go look at any video of Jim McMahon over the last 20 years, like that is the ultimate fear. Like that's the kind of stuff that's like the reason I stopped playing football. You know what I mean? And why I think anybody that deals with multiple concussions like that should go and look at that, or look at, you know, Muhammad Ali, you know, one of the greatest fighters ever. Look at the cognitive ability that he had once he got to, you know, 50 years old and past. So it takes such a mental toll. We're only human. You know what I mean? Even these guys that are modern day gladiators, at the end of the day, you got a couple of organs in there that you just can't mess with. They, like the brain and the heart, like they are what they are. You're only human, and it can only take so much. So, and I don't know what his concussion past is like in high school and in college. Like I haven't even looked into all that. So if he's had more concussions in the past, that's even more to think about.
Well, and in college and in high school and college is probably. I mean, I don't want to speak for Division I colleges. Okay, you know, the college is a minor like the NFL is, and then in high school you got history teachers are running the fucking program, right? So we don't know. That's the same thing with my son. I mean, I know of a couple. There's probably a couple more that we weren't aware that that's what happened. And so that's the scary thing. How many did he have? Is he already susceptible because he had several and we didn't know about it? Did they hide them in college? We're talking about money talking. You know?
Good question, especially there at Alabama.
Right. I mean, and we'll say any big, powerful university. I don't want to just piss off Alabama fans. I mean, there's just weird shit that goes on at every level. At every level of every sports, there's weird shit that goes on because people want to win. we just don't know what kind of concussions the Tua has had. We don't know what he's susceptible. And I'm worried about the guy's health and safety. And I'm worried about how the Dolphins are going to handle this. I mean, I don't have an answer, right? I don't know. I don't know enough about it. I'll never know enough, to quote Jim Mora. You'll never know, right? But he's got a hell of a decision on his hands whether to go with him or to bring somebody to back, strong to back him up and expect him to go down, or to cut their losses and roll. I don't know what the answer is, but I'm not real confident that Tua will be in the league in 2 years from now.
Yeah, and really, I wouldn't blame him. You know what I mean? And while we sit here and talk about concussions and obviously brain damage is one of the more serious things as a human. You know what I mean? There's so much that you depend on with the brain, but you look further than that. You can go look at the other effects of football. Ryan Shazier, was one of the best linebackers in the league, and he had to stop playing football. I think it was 6 years ago, when Ryan Shazier had the hit that forced him to retire. And at the time, it was unclear whether he was ever going to walk again. Like, that was a scary situation. He's since been able to make, for the most part, full recovery, and obviously never came back to play football, which is unfortunate, and that ended his career. But to move on to one of the biggest stories, probably the biggest story in football of my lifetime. I don't know about you. There are a couple here in your lifetime, but the Damar Hamlin situation and what happened on Monday Night Football, and going back and looking at that, that's a situation that I think we can all agree on. Anybody that's ever played football, like, it's talked about, I'd die on the field, die to get the job done. People have said that. You know what I mean? People said, put it all on the line, give it everything you have. And there's always in the back of your mind as a football player, like, there's a chance I could get paralyzed here. There's a chance something worse can happen, but you never actually anticipate that happening. And as a football fan, just watching a game, especially watching professionals, even as violent as some of these hits have been, and as crazy some of these concussions have been that we've seen, and people getting knocked out on the field, you never really expect it to get worse. And then we saw what happened on Monday Night Football in the first quarter in the Bills-Bengals game. And easily, again, for me, the scariest situation I've ever seen on a football field. You know what I mean? I remember being younger, and my cousin broke his collarbone. We were in 6th grade or something like that, and he broke his collarbone. I remember hearing the scream from him, and the ambulance taking him away, and that was a scary situation that I personally went through. But watching this situation happen, it was, prime time NFL Monday Night Football. We're talking about NFL Monday Night Football. This is one of the biggest stages in the world in sports that happens on a weekly basis. So for football fans as a collective, for the football community as a collective, to see this happen, like luckily, like where we are at this point, recording this on Monday, January 9th, it's been a week. Damar Hamlin has since recovered enough to be sent home from the hospital, which is incredible from what we saw. But like, going back, like, the fact that it's possible that we could watch a dude die, literally died on the field, is just absolutely wild to go through. And you think about the Bills players that were there, and the Bengals players, and T. Higgins. I feel like not enough people are talking about T. Higgins in this situation and what he feels like. Damar Hamlin, the players. I heard Tre'Davious White after the game in Week 18 during his press conference after the game. He said that one of the first things Damar Hamlin did after waking up and talking to the team was ask how the team was doing. You know what I mean? And this whole situation has been one of the wildest things to go through, again, as players, as fans. Like, I couldn't, like, it's hard to put words to what we saw, because it's, in my lifetime, this has never happened. Like, and I never thought that this would happen. You know what I mean? And it was like, I'd be lying to you if I said I didn't get emotional about this. Like, I was shook up about it. Again, as a former player, somebody that stopped playing because of a severe concussion, and the thought of something worse possibly happening, it's it was something that shook me to the core. I know a lot of people that I talked to, a lot of people that we heard, obviously, the Dan Orlovskis, the Ryan Clarks of the world, a lot of the things that we heard. The whole football community as a whole was shook up, and it was also great to see the whole football community and even past the football community, people coming together to show love and to pray, and everybody. It was the most togetherness I think I've seen from the world in quite some time too. So as we talk about the ugly side of it, there comes that bright side of it too.
Yeah, very well said. It's certainly, when things like this happen, it certainly puts us in touch with our humanity, but also when things like this happen, it certainly puts us in touch with our humanity through acknowledging our mortality. When a 24-year-old superhero that is incredibly fast and flashy and is playing a game that millions love, and people buy his jerseys, and they want to see big hits, and they want to see this and that, and when someone who is supposed to be almost invincible almost dies right in front of you, that everybody checks that down, right? They're like, holy shit, this is real, this is reality. It's suddenly not fantasy anymore, and when you said this may be the biggest sports story of your life, you might be right. I watch a lot of football. I'm having a hard time. I mean, I know I told you the night it happened that there had been a player that died before, which I was amazed that I knew that, and none of the announcers even knew. They just kept saying, this has never happened before, this has never happened before. And in fact, it has happened before. It happened in 1971 with a man named Charlie Hughes. But that was 51 years ago. I mean, I wasn't even, I mean, I was like a couple months old when that happened. But we know now that it was commotio cordis, which is a condition that happens when the heart takes blunt force trauma at just the right time. And when I say just the right time, I can't even begin to describe what just the right time means, because a millisecond before or a millisecond after, he probably doesn't go down. This is like a 1 in a billion chance this could have happened. It's astronomical, and not only that, but maybe even where he was hit is just off a millimeter or two. It changes everything. I don't even know. I mean, it's so astronomical. There's no way to even know or calculate that. But this is why Little League pitchers wear chest protectors now. This is why catchers wear chest protectors. I mean, this is why shoulder pads have a chest protector. This is a thing. I mean, it's rare, but we've seen this is lethal, right? Taking a shot to the chest. When I was in high school, I was jacking around in between class with a buddy of mine, and I punched him square in the chest, and he dropped to his knee, and the teacher freaked out and panicked. And I was like, what? I thought they were overreacting. I didn't get in trouble because we weren't fighting. But now I'm older, and I have, I was an EMT for 25 years and a retired firefighter. I understand what that means. I understand how traumatic that is. And I knew what was happening the other night. It was amazing that on social media, you watch people who don't even watch football were suddenly tuning in. I think that's kind of humanity's morbid curiosity, but I also don't know that that's necessarily a bad thing. I think people want to tune into that kind of stuff, but I know people were absolutely really touched by the whole thing, which is an understatement. We've all seen that. I'm going to say something that's a little controversial. We talked about this that night. It's going to work out and it's going to be okay. I was shocked they didn't finish that game, and there are two reasons. All right, first of all, it's the right thing to do to jump in and say a man's life is worth more than football. Don't be insensitive. There's so much that goes into these games. I mean, there's just so much. I mean, people they revolve their whole lives around going to the game and what they got to do and how they're going to get home. I mean, and then the playoffs and employees at places they're supposed to play. I mean, there's so much. That is unfactorable in itself. It's incalculable. You can't calculate it. And I told you when we talked about it, I said, now they're going to not only have to play one game in the next 10 days, now they got to play 2 games under duress of what happened to their teammate. And I told you they're probably going to bury him. I have a lot of medical experience, and I talked to a lot of people who have medical experience after this happened, and there wasn't anybody. I mean, I don't think people understand what a miracle it was that Damar Hamlin came home today. I don't think they get it. His odds of survival were really low. Now, there are a couple things. One, because he's a 24-year-old athlete, his body's in pristine condition. So he has what's called perfusion. He perfuses oxygen way better than you and I do because of his physical fitness. That's the first thing. The second thing is having the medical crew right there. If it happens to somebody at their house, they call 911. There's a 2 to 5 minute delay before an ambulance or anyone there gets there to start CPR effectively, unless they're lucky enough to be in a place that someone knows CPR has an AED. But having the medical staff right there on top of him, those are the two reasons the man's still alive. Okay, but I know a lot of people who did not expect him to walk out of that hospital. That he would either die or he would have severe brain damage, or other severe organ damage, which we're not sure. I haven't heard reports. I don't know if they'd release that. Anyway,
there is lung damage that they're trying to work through.
Yeah, and I had heard the lung damage. So it's a freaking miracle that he walked out. It's going to be okay, right? And it worked out probably for the better. So when I say that, that about the game, I honestly, they revived him at the hospital. I guess he was down. They revived him on the field, and then they revived him, and they went down. They revived him in the hospital. I mean, there's an argument to be made with playing the game would have distracted the teammates because they can't do anything anyway. I guess what makes the whole story and solidifies the whole thing for me is that I had heard that Sean McDermott told Zach Taylor, I have to leave. I have to go be with Damar Hamlin. So I don't think the game could have been finished. It's just at the time I thought, man, this is going to be ugly. But they figured it out and they sorted it out. And I think it was probably the absolute right thing to do, considering the circumstances. And on the flip side of this, I thought it's so weird how this could have gone either way. Damar Hamlin doesn't survive, or he's still incapacitated. Then it's almost a kill shot to the Buffalo Bills season, and rightfully so. I don't know the heaviness on that locker room. I don't know that they could have shaken that to come back and perform at the level they did yesterday. On the flip side, the fact that he's home, we talked about this in the Buffalo Bills video, dude, he injected a freaking fire in them that probably isn't going to wear off until the Super Bowl's over and they're holding the trophy over their head. The AFC better be on notice because the road's going through Buffalo. And I really believe Sean McDermott, I really believe this team is probably they'll probably play the Eagles, maybe the 49ers. But I'd be hard pressed to bet against them. This has really done, really got them. They've got something to play for, and it's hard. That kind of competitive spirit when you have something to play for, it's completely different with life or death, and that kind of emotion behind. I mean, the roller coaster of emotions that these guys have gone through this last week. They have to have an outlet, and it's coming, man. The Buffalo Bills storm is coming. But we're happy for Damar Hamlin. It's a fucking miracle, man. I can't believe the guy went home today. I'm just absolutely mystified and just absolutely grateful.
Yeah, grateful. That's the word that was coming to mind. Is just like, thank goodness he was able to walk away from it. Because if no matter what happens after this situation, there's going to be a lot of dudes that have been in this league for a while that are probably going into this offseason rethinking their careers and what it means to them and what it's worth to them and everything like that after this situation. So it's like you said, it's amazing that Damar was able to not only live through this, but is already leaving the hospital. And I can't wait to see what the reaction is when Damar, assuming that they're going to ask Damar to show up for this game and be in the stadium. When he shows up on the field, Bills Mafia is going to lose their minds, and I cannot wait to watch that happen.
Yeah, it's really hard. Anybody is going to be hard pressed to root against the Bills unless they've got a team. You got a hometown team at stake. You're forgiven. Everybody else, I completely expect this Bills bandwagon to get really crowded really fast.
Yeah, and it just makes it better that Bills fans are awesome. Like it's an amazing fan base to join, so why not hop on the wagon?
I, I mean, I don't think everybody knows that you're an honorary member of the Bills Mafia.
That is
They've
correct.
accepted you in.
Yes, in a video, like mid-season video, I asked Bills Mafia if I could be accepted, and somebody commented said, "Welcome to the club." So I
There
am
you go.
officially honorary Bills Mafia.
So congratulations.
Yeah, feels good because the Colts are trash. Let's go win a Super Bowl.